Hi there, YouTube. It's Asenva here, and I am here today to do a response via a video. And I actually got a question asked to me in my YouTube personal messages, and I thought it was a super duper good question. I thought I'd put this video together and answer her question because in case if there's any other people that may be new to the hobby or have questions that may be similar to this one, it could possibly help you. On to the question. The Anna Pavitt asks, buying separate things is a bit confusing for me. How do I make sure that I'm getting the right size? So let me give you a little pre-introduction to this. She is looking to get a resin sole May. She was wondering a whole bunch of different little things, and so I had emailed her back and or messaged her back, and I thought that was a good thing to talk about since I have done a couple of other introductory videos for people that are curious and kind of my spiel on things of the hobby. And I thought, you know what, this would be a good time to do a my spiel video on BJD and sizes. Now I'm not talking about like what the size limit of whatever you should get, you know, you should totally get this size. I'm talking more of what do SD, MSD, OSD mean to me, and as far as when you buy a doll, what should you be looking for in terms of clothing, shoes, and all that fun stuff. So to start things off, let me go ahead and give you a rundown of essentially what SD, MSD, and USD mean. Interestingly enough, those terms are actually coined terms that we in the BJD hobby have been using for different sizes of dolls, but in reality it's actually a Volks term. Volks is one of our beginning back in the day companies. They had set up their dolls for SD, USD, and MSD. I switched to the last. And essentially what those mean, you have SD, which means super dolphy. You have MSD, which means mini super dolphy. And then you have USD, which there's a couple different things floating around, but I think the main gist of it is yo, coming from a Japanese term which refers to children and childlike things. Either way, if you want to think about it, you got SD, which is kind of like your large, MSD, which is your middle size doll, and you have USD, which is your smaller ones. Now there's a bunch of other different sizes out there too that are kind of new-ish, I guess. You have some that are considered hounds or half-scaled dolls. Those are the really big ones. And then you've got the extreme other side of it, which goes beyond that of a USD, which is kind of like your tinies. Tinies are like 11 centimeters, and it's smaller than that even. They're tiny. Now, the funny thing about people calling them MSDs or USDs or SDs is that if you think about it, it's a term that was used for Volks. That's how Volks separates their dolls. If you kind of want to be a tad bit more accurate, you'd be using the number system, which a lot of sites are starting to use now. That is when they actually put it into fractions, and that's in scale terms, I guess, of an average human or whatnot. You have the 1/3 scale, which is your quote-unquote SDs. You have a 1/4 scale, which is your MSDs. Those are your little mini ones. And then you have your 1/6 scale, which are the USDs, the smaller ones. As you get bigger, from the 1/3 it goes into the half, and if you go smaller than the USD from the 1/6, it's a 1/16. So just to kind of, you know, put a mental picture to, you know, something physical, I'm gonna actually go ahead and show you some of the sizes that I talked about. Fortunately, I don't have a hound, but I have a friend that has a hound, and if you could just imagine a huge, like, 1-year-old standing up, that's basically what they are. They're amazingly huge, but amazingly gorgeous, so just if you're wondering about the hounds, it's pretty much what they are. So this is a good range of the different sizes that I have, at least in my collection. As you can see, they all are way different in sizes. And the funny thing about the different companies that they have out there is that even though something is labeled an SD or an MSD or USD, within those companies they make them at different heights. So it really depends. Like whenever you're looking at something, it's not exactly universally set across all companies. If you buy an SD, that yes, it's going to be 62 centimeters. It'll vary. As you can see here, I have my smallest one, which is, you know, an 11 centimeter obitsu, so it's kind of like a tiny. I have my 26, I guess, 27 centimeter fantasy doll girl, and that's considered USD. You have two of these here, and just so you can see just differences in companies. This is a Resin Soul Mai, and then it's a Gabriella and Doll Leaves, and the girl is shorter than the boy here, but if I were to grab my boy from Doll Leaves, the Doll Leaves boy is actually a bit smaller than the girl. So I mean, it really varies company to company. This one here, Sophie, she's a really interesting one because she's like an in-between size. She's actually 50 centimeters, which is just an interesting like height to begin with, because there's not, I mean, I don't know exactly if you categorize them really as MSD or as a really short SD. So I mean, in that aspect, I mean, it's just, you know, she's just there. So I consider her to be a really tall MSD doll. But moving up from there, those two right there are SD dolls. And if you want to go by their numbers, and as you can see, once again, you know, the girl is shorter than the boy, but that may not be the same, you know, on all companies. My Resin Soul boy is just a tad bit taller than my girl here, which is a Doll's Own Lotus. So I mean, it really varies. It depends on your company. So whenever you do buy dolls, mainly if you're trying to look for pairings or if you want a couple, you do want to make sure that you take a look at those centimeters and how tall they are, and make sure it's a measurement with the head, because it varies, you know, varies from company to company. So depending on what size doll you have, that of course will affect the eyes that they use, the hair, the clothes, the shoes. When you go in to purchase your doll, there should be a page for measurements. It should be listed somewhere there in the description. If not, I highly recommend you doing the research into finding it, because that will be the key in you finding things for that doll in particular to wear and what will go with them. Now this is where it gets really tricky, because in the market that we have right now, some companies, whenever you go and buy items from them, they literally just label it as SD size, MSD size, and USD size. This can get kind of tricky at times, because speaking from personal experience, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you out there in the doll hobby have had times where you've purchased something that is labeled SD and it doesn't fit your doll. And so you're sitting there just crying because these pants are too big, or vice versa, the pants are too small, or something. And I mean, unfortunately, that is a risk that you will have to take if it is not labeled with measurements. Sometimes though, they will tell you dolls that will fit into those pants or whatever is being sold. It'll say, like, you know, fits Doll's Own Boys and such other dolls and whatever. Sometimes it'll tell you that, and sometimes it won't. So it's gonna really, you know, a good thing to do is that if you know somebody, or if you can find somebody that owns that doll that you are really looking or interested in getting, you can ask them, hey, you know, I noticed that you have, you know, a Resin Soul gang. What kind of clothes have you found, you know, that fit your doll really well? Shoes can be a nightmare sometimes, mainly if you're starting out and it's just really overwhelming. You're just looking at doll websites looking for shoes, and it's just like, what's 3.5 mean? What's this, like, 4.7 or whatever? Like, it's weird. For example, take my doll family, Ling Yu, who has a 7.5 foot listed as measurements. He is currently wearing an 8.5 shoe. That's basically just like a 1 centimeter difference, which isn't too much. That gives his feet room. Just like whenever you buy shoes for yourself, you probably could fit into one smaller size, but you prefer to get it a tad bit bigger, you know, for comfort. Same thing with your dolls, because if you ever try to put socks on or anything else, it might not fit if you try to get it super tiny, and it just, in general, just might not fit. Eyes, it should tell you whenever you buy your doll what size eye is the recommended eye size. Some people change them. It really is gonna be up to you. Now, some things are kind of impossible to do. So for example, little Umi here, she is like a 12 millimeter eye. You cannot shove a 20 millimeter eye into this. 1, because it'll look weird, and 2, it just won't fit. Some dolls have different kind of like eye sockets that are fit to only, you know, be used for that specific eye that they recommend to you. Some of them you can probably try to get away with it, but usually it's best to keep the size eye that's recommended. Another fun thing is wigs. Depending on what doll that you have, most of the times they're categorized again in either the SD, MSD, USD tag, or they're going to be labeled the 1/3, 1/4, 1/6, which we already know what that is, or they'll be put in by inches. So you have a SD, which will be your 8/9s. You have MSDs, which are going to be 7/8. You have these guys, which are like 6/7s. And then you have smaller ones that are 5/6. So let's say that you have a doll that has a 15 centimeter circumference head. What does that mean? If you're lazy like I am, you can go to a converter, just type in, you know, in Google, you know, centimeters to inches. And 15 centimeters is actually 5.9 inches, which is where we get the 6 to 7 inch wig scale that you can purchase for your doll. And that about wraps it up for my little tidbits on BJD sizes in the BJD hobby. Hope this helped anybody that had questions or is a newbie into the hobby and was kind of wondering, what does SD mean? What does MSD mean? I don't know what's going on. It's madness. As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to pass them to me. I will do my best to help you out. And I hope you guys have an awesome day. I shall be doing more videos to come. There will be another Junkie Spot review in the making. And there's also going to be a super duper secretive thing that I will, you know, hopefully show to you guys soon, which will be awesome. Boy, guy! What's your tip? What's your tip for buying clothes for dolls?
The shorter the skirt, the better.
Words of wisdom from my husband.